Mark Musi, and I'm talking to my friend and colleague Manoj Jain, and we've been discussing the categories of meditation. We've talked about why we think it's necessary to put different labels on the kinds and modalities of meditation. And today we're going to talk more about these specific categories that we use. And the first one we talk about is known as focused attention. So could you begin, Manoj, by telling us again what focused attention actually is?
So focused attention meditation is, in simpler words, anchoring meditation. What we do is we anchor our mind, our thoughts, to a specific object. May it be an image, may it be an activity, may it be a word or a phrase. And what that does is it allows many of our thoughts, which are wandering, to become focused on a particular activity or a phrase. Often people use a word or even a prayer, and that works really well. What I do often, and what many people are using commonly, is our breath, because we breathe all the time, and often we don't even notice that we're breathing. So at moments of anxiety, or at times when I just feel I'm out of control, I've lost my sense of control, I sort of take a moment and I used focused attention meditation, just focusing on my breath.
Do you think it matters what one chooses as an anchor? So you mentioned focusing upon a thought or a sound or a breath or an image. Does the choice of the anchor matter in the meditation process?
Well, as long as the anchor is not distracting. So suppose you chose your spouse as an anchor, and you've had a conflict with your spouse in the morning, and you're using that as an anchor. What that will do is bring distracting thoughts, and distracting thoughts will then lead to connected thoughts and judgments and evaluation. That will make it very difficult. So often it's better to use a object or a word or a phrase which is in generic maybe at times, or that makes you gives you a feeling of well-being, of peace, something that can cultivate a sense of happiness in you. And that's why it's important to use a particular type of word or a phrase which works well with you.
I can also imagine someone asking this question, because the same experience happened to me when I first began to meditate, and that is, what do I do when I find it difficult to concentrate?
Well, that's the point of doing meditation, right? Because our minds wander. And it's okay for minds to wander at different things at different times. But when that wandering turns into a distraction, and at times that distraction can even become pathologic as becoming obsession or obsessive. But when that distraction is not allowing us to function at our top capacity, that's when to begin the practice. And with practice, what we notice is that we are able to control our mind. We can control our breath. And if we begin to focus in controlling our breath, and we can even control our bodies and arms, we realize that we can also control the mind and the distracted thoughts that come and disturb us again and again against our will. However, if there are thoughts that we are curious, that we're exploring, well, that's good. That's okay. They aren't distracting thoughts. But when those thoughts are not allowing us to function at our top capacity, then they're harmful.
I can imagine thoughts wandering in a way that is done with mindfulness. Can you imagine that sort of situation where it's not distractedness so much, but you're kind of free associating, and yet doing it with a sense of mindfulness, being aware of where your mind is going?
Yeah, absolutely. And often we practice that. We call brainstorming our ways that we begin to just allow ourselves to have different thoughts. And that works really well. Focused attention is an exercise. Meditation is an exercise which allows us to know the capacity of our mind. It allows us to know what we are capable of doing. Just as when we exercise or practice for a basketball game or we do weightlifting, we see the capacity of the muscles that we have.
Yeah.
Meditation is quite similar, and that's how we need to begin to think about it. One of the types of meditations is focused attention.
And I would say, to kind of bring this to a conclusion, that's precisely one of the forms of meditation that's most needed in our world today.
Yeah.
Because so many of us experience our lives as distracted, as torn in different directions, and the ability to concentrate attention on one thing could be very helpful in so many different ways. So thank you again for enlightening us and bringing this idea of focused attention to a greater understanding. So we'll come back shortly and talk more about the different categories. I believe our next conversation will be what we call open monitoring. So we'll see you then.